Welcome to Cyclone InCYders. I am your host, John Miller. I'm here today with Aaron, Julia, and Logan. We're going to talk about some Cyclone athletics. Cyclone football suffered a tough loss last week to number 6 Oklahoma State. It felt like a winnable game for the Cyclones, but they just ended up coming up short. So we're going to talk about that and more for the Cyclones' next game here against Kansas. But stick around for Cyclone InCYders. All right, welcome back to Cyclone InCYders. As I stated previously, Iowa State was ranked 17th, coming into play number 6 Oklahoma State on the road. They ended up losing 21-24, kind of a late score at the end to get it within 3. It wasn't much of a 3-point game necessarily, but what were your guys' just initial thoughts on the game? You know, it seemed kind of sloppy on both sides, so I'm interested to hear what you guys think.
My initial thoughts on the game was I was just going into the game expecting a lot more on the Cyclones' end, just with how they've been playing the past few weekends. And I just think the flags and the field goals killed us the most. I mean, Astley missed 2 field goals in the first half that could have very easily changed the pace of the game, which I think very much so killed the score at the end. And then also in the fourth quarter on the drive where Cole missed like a perfectly thrown pass from Brady, it was like hit him right in the chest. And he missed it, and I think that just like lost hope for the Cyclones in a way, even for the fans, because they really could have used that drive for a touchdown. And then also Brock only threw 162 yards, which was his 4th lowest season of the season. So I think that also killed them.
Yeah, I definitely think there was just too many mistakes, and obviously, if those field goals are made, the Cyclones win. But there was just penalties at critical times. And I've also been noticing that it seems like they get a handful of illegal procedure penalties every single game. And you can't be having problems getting into formation and knowing where to line up this far into the season. So that's just another example of shooting themselves in the foot. And like what you said, Julia, after Charlie Kolar dropped that pass that was right on the numbers, I kind of had a bad feeling after that, because if Charlie Kolar is dropping passes, it's just maybe not our day. But one bright spot, I do think the defense looked great, and the defense did their job, and there was a lot of times where Oklahoma State started out with really good field position, and they were able to hold on, and it was just basically the offense was pretty dead in the second half after that Brees Hall touchdown, I think was 66 yards. And so yeah, defense really doesn't need to change anything. It's a lot of the problems are offensive right now for the Cyclones.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. It was really sad to see them lose this big game for them. You know, it obviously wouldn't have been a big staple win in the Big 12, beating number 6 Oklahoma State. But just like you said, Aaron, I think that the big interceptions from Mike Rose and White really helped the defense, you know, kind of help the Cyclones stay in the game. So I think the defense is getting better every game, and I was just I wasn't happy that we lost, but I was glad to see that we can compete against these, you know, top 10 teams. So.
Yeah, I think you guys all make great points. You know, everybody wants to blame the kicker, especially when it's a close game, and he's 0 for 2. But I think, like you guys said, it's just the offense looked horrible. And a big part of that offense, Brock Purdy, as Julia said, he had barely over a 50% completion percentage and only threw for 1 touchdown interception, which is a far away from what I predicted last week in the pick'em. But why do you guys think he's just looked so much worse this year, and what kind of factors do you think play into that?
The number one thing for me has been his mechanics. There's been a lot of times where he throws off the back foot when he's scrambling, or even in the second half he had this throw. It was like a jump throw where he could have just stepped up in the pocket and planted his feet, but he jumped as he threw it and he short hopped the receiver. And it's just things like that. His interception, the receiver had the corner beat by a step or two, and he just underthrew it, and the safety was able to pick it off. And another part of it, I think the offense was pretty predictable. against a really good Oklahoma State defense in the second half. It felt like they were going, run on first down, throw on second and third, 3-and-out. I don't know how many 3-and-outs they had in a row, but it felt like a lot. And they really just stopped mixing it up against an Oklahoma State defense that you really can't have such a vanilla offense against. So that's obviously not going to help Purdy at all. So I'd say definitely the biggest two things for me are mechanics and then just trying to get more variety in the offense. And we saw a lot of that against Oklahoma. The Oklahoma game was a very good called game on the offensive side of things, and we haven't really seen anything since then that has been very exciting on the offensive end.
Yeah, I would have to agree with Aaron. I think I felt like watching the game offense, it was very predictable, I would have to say, especially when you're playing a great defense like Oklahoma State. You have to switch things up. You have to keep them on their toes. And I think they're running the ball a lot, which, yes, I understand because Brees Hall is a great running back by them. I mean, he was co-offensive player of the week for the Big 12. So I understand why they go towards him, but I think it's just too predictable sometimes. And when you have that smart of a defense that you're playing, you can't just give them a free ball like that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with both you guys. And I also think Purdy might be trying to live up to his great season last year. I mean, he broke multiple school records and, dealing with these tough Big 12 games back to back. It's we have the bye weeks in between, but the Big 12 is definitely tough. Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Kansas State now coming into the top 25. I think that, it's kind of a lot of pressure on him, but I can also agree with, the mechanics side. And I think I see a big bounce back for Purdy against Kansas this next week.
Yeah, I almost feel like the creativity of like the offense compared to last year is just like less because I feel like there's a lot of plays last year we could see Purdy like running around and just kind of like doing his own thing, and now he's kind of like controlled into feeding off Hall and just like everybody else. So it's almost like it almost feels like as a Cyclone fan that Brees Hall's success has kind of led to Purdy's downfall, and whether that's good or not is up to you. But but with that said, do you guys still think Purdy's like an NFL caliber quarterback coming into the year? And at the end of last year, mock drafts were talking about him going late first round, second, third. So he was supposed to be, one of those guys that was up there, and now his status is kind of dwindling. But do you guys think he still has what it takes to be in the NFL?
Yeah, I mean, I think he has a lot to fix if he wants to get a chance at starting in the NFL. Right now, he'd probably be like a late round project QB that, a team with a really good offensive coordinator, a really good quarterback coach is going to take a chance on and try to develop. But there's already going to be a narrative about how short he is because it always happens with short quarterbacks. And all the scouts say that, quarterbacks like Kyler Murray and Drew Brees or Russell Wilson, they're exceptions to the rule. But there's been a lot more short quarterbacks being successful in the NFL. But that's going to be a narrative he's going to have to work against. And if he keeps having games like this, that narrative is just going to continue. But I definitely think just working on the mechanics, and then hopefully Iowa State starts adding a little bit more spice to their offense, and he can shine a little bit more with more creative offensive play calling. So, he has what it takes to be in the NFL. It's just a matter of fixing a few key things.
Yeah, I agree with you there. He is definitely still an NFL quarterback. Every college quarterback's going to have their fluke games. 164 yards, one touchdown, one interception, and if he doesn't get that late interception or late touchdown at the game, it's even more of a lackluster performance on his part. But I definitely still think that he needs to have those big games. We take into account the TCU game he had last year. More big games like that definitely get him higher on draft boards. Personally, right now, I think he's more of maybe like a fourth, fifth rounder, but I definitely still think he'll be in the NFL. Hopefully, staying with us next year, but we'll just have to see.
Yeah, you guys all made great points. I'd honestly rather see him stay another year because I think he could have a lot more success. The Iowa State team, I think they both, with Brees Hall and him, I think they could do a lot of damage. I mean, especially if they don't win the Big 12 this year, there's even a better chance next year. And they could even go on and win a couple bowl games, possibly by chance. But I definitely think Purdy is able to go into the NFL, but I think he could use another season, to be honest, to rank up.
Yeah, I mean that quarterback class this year that's going to be going in the draft most likely is absolutely stellar. I mean Trevor Lawrence is one of the greatest quarterbacks that, or I should say, touted quarterbacks that has been in the college scene in a while. And then you got Justin Fields from Ohio State, Trey Lance from North Dakota State's like a FCS guy that's been killing it. So Purdy might be better off just staying in school and next year maybe trying to get back to that. Upper level of rounds. But we'll just have to wait and see how he plays the rest of the year before he can make that choice. But we've been talking about Breece Hall. I mean, the man, the myth, the legend. We talked about the battle last week that Hall and Hubbard were going to have between two great running backs, and they both lived up to expectations. But I think Hall stole the show. I mean, he ran for 9.3 yards of rush, 20 carries, 188 yards. How do you guys think he's just been so dynamic? I mean, it's like he was great last year, but now he's just on another level.
Yeah, I think it's a mixture of two things. So first of all, you have to give the O-line credit, and any running back will say that. Breece Hall would say that. I think compared to years past, the O-line has been pretty reliable for Iowa State. And considering Trevor Downing hasn't really played all season, who's arguably their best offensive lineman, and they've still been able to have some great games, and Breece Hall's had some great performances. That says a lot about the depth that Matt Campbell's been able to build, and also the way he's been able to develop his recruits. But then I also think it's just the confidence you have going from your freshman to sophomore year. You know what to expect now as a Big 12 player, as an NCAA player, and I'm sure that's been a big part of it too. Just building that confidence and that work in the offseason to come in strong to his sophomore campaign.
Yeah, definitely give some credit to the O-line. It's played phenomenal this year. They definitely give Breece Hall the big plays, and he's going to take advantage of that. And he's brought his game every time he stepped on that field. And I definitely see that 66-yard touchdown run to the house as a big confidence booster going in to the Jayhawks game this week.
Yeah, I have to agree with you both, you guys. I think the O-line definitely deserves credit. We both all highlighted that. And I also just think the offseason, he just really grinded it out and knew, this is what I wish I would have done this year. This is what I want to do this year as a sophomore. And I think he's just really made himself some goals, and he's really striving for it.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to point out. I believe Hall was kind of in that 3-star, more towards like 4-star range, and everybody knew he was going to be a impact player for the Cyclones when he kind of got here and started playing last year. But I don't think anybody expected him to be playing on this level so quickly his sophomore year, and that's just a credit to the coaching staff and kind of getting him in the right spot he needs to be to perform so well. But like we said, I mean, the offense as a whole, they were scoring 30 points the past couple of weeks there before this game, and now they obviously only had 21. What do you guys think needs to be changed? I mean, do we need to get Hall the ball more? Do we just, what kind of play calling things do you guys think need to be changed this week and maybe down the rest of the season?
I think just the offense needs to be more creative all around. Like that second half against Oklahoma State, it was a lot of run on first down, throw on second and third, became very predictable. Seemed like they were just repeating the same sequence every single drive. And honestly, Kansas is pretty bad, so that would probably work against them. But it's still, you don't want to see that coming from an Iowa State offense with the amount of dynamic players they have. And also just less penalties. Like all those illegal procedure penalties they get on offense has really made a lot of drives stall. So things like that, I'll honestly be pretty concerned. I think the spread is like 28 or 28.5 against Kansas, and I'll be concerned if they beat Kansas by less than 4 touchdowns, just because of how bad they are. And hopefully this week they can just beat a team they're supposed to beat, get back to imposing their will, and build up some confidence for Baylor.
Yeah, Aaron made some great points. I definitely think running the game is our strong suit with Breece Hall, but I also don't think we can run the ball every single time because it's just too easy to guess. And I think against Kansas, this is their chance to really be creative and try new things out and try to get confident with different sequences and not just try to do the same old stuff that we always do, especially against a predictable, not that great of a team like Kansas is. And I just think that will be their strong suit going forward.
Yeah, I definitely think there are a couple things that we can try out against Kansas this week. One of those being we need to take advantage of the special teams. If you watch Kansas's game against Kansas State last week, they gave up two return touchdowns, which I think just dug a bigger hole into their lead. And then get Brees Hall the ball as a receiving threat. You know, he had 252 yards in the air last season, and I think that if we develop that into his game more, then he'll be definitely a higher prospect, and he'll be seen as more of a threat. And also, do get Brock Purdy in that play action. You know, force the ball to those tight ends. Last week, Stephen Wheeler had a 33-yard touchdown, and then another touchdown by Bradley Moore last week for Kansas State. So I think Kansas really can't defend those tight ends, and we all know that we have a great tight end core that we can take advantage of against the Jayhawks.
Yeah, I love how you bring up the play action there, Logan. I think everybody's going to be keying on Hall down the stretch here, and while he might not be able to explode for those near 200-yard games, feeding him kind of early and just establishing the run, and then letting Purdy do his thing behind that, I think that's something we can go down the road instead of kind of just like the backwards, kind of like Aaron was saying, where we run on first down. It needs to be a mix and not just like all the time knowing what we're going to do. And so, yeah, but the Jayhawks, as you said, they're winless so far this season. So if we're going to try anything, this would be the week to do it. But I don't think airing it out necessarily is the best strategy. So let's just get that run going and let Purdy do his thing after that. Because as we all have all said, Purdy's not bad or, washed by any means. He just kind of needs, a reinvigorated play style. So, but anyways, the Cyclones – from the loss, they fell from 17th to 23rd in the AP polls. Do you guys think that fall was too harsh? Oklahoma State stayed at 6 in retrospect. So what do you guys think?
I think it was kind of expected with the Big Ten being in action now that if Iowa State were to lose, they would fall a little bit. I think 6 spots is maybe a bit too much. I would say like maybe 19th or 20th would be better. But because losing by 3, as bad as they looked at times, losing by 3 to the number 6 team in the country isn't a bad loss. And that's a big testament to the defense, too, just how they're able to keep Iowa State in the game for so long. But yeah, I basically think it's just expected with the Big Ten being in action. I think the new number 17 is Indiana after their win against Penn State. And that's just when teams have just played their first game. If you get a big win in your first game, you're gonna get put into the rankings, and then we'll see how good Indiana is from here. But there's just gonna be a lot of variance in the rankings for the next few weeks with Big Ten teams playing their first few games.
Yeah, I'll say I think it was a little disrespectful to put them 6 spots lower. I mean, we keep it that close, 3 points on a team on the road, but Oklahoma beats TCU, an unranked team, I will say, on the road as well, but they get moved into the top 25, just 1 spot below us. I just think it's yes, as you stated, the Big Ten was more in action this week, and also the Mountain West Conference was also there. They have a couple teams in the top 25, but definitely kind of they need to look more at what the Cyclones have done, instead of just looking at last week's performance, which we stayed in that game until the very end. But I definitely think we should have been around 19, 20, like you said, Aaron.
Yeah, I agree with you. Well, I did not expect this to drop all the way down to 23. I at least thought like 20 or at least 21. And I was looking at the rankings, and USC got ranked above us, and they haven't even played a game yet. I understand conference just opened up, but it still just seemed a bit – they haven't even done anything, and we clearly proved our greatness. And then I was also even looking at Coastal Carolina. I mean, yeah, their first game was against Kansas. I mean, that's a wash of a game, I personally feel like. And then they also played the ranked team in Louisiana, which we lost to, and they beat. But it's still like, I mean, we beat Oklahoma, which was at the time a ranked team. So I just think the rankings seemed a bit, like you were saying, respectful. I think we definitely earned our spot, and we still kept playing 3 points.
Yeah, definitely. Iowa State, I mean, it feels like they should be, in that 15 to 20 range. They played all these games against tough teams, while Oklahoma State hasn't even played the hardest teams in the Big 12 yet, in Oklahoma, Kansas State, and Texas. I mean, they feel like one of the weakest in my opinion at least, and one of the weakest top 6 teams we've seen. I mean, besides us, it feels like they really haven't played anybody tough. But, we can't really say that until they do play them later in the season. But for them to drop Iowa State 6 places for playing such a tight game with them, it feels a little bit too harsh. But as we said, the games are being played less this year, and teams aren't playing as much, so it's hard to get a gauge of where they're at. But after all, the rankings won't matter to the end of the season anyways, so we'll just have to wait and see on that. But we're going to go ahead and pick all of the Big 12 games later in the show, including Iowa State's game against Kansas. So stick around for Cyclone InCYders. Welcome back to Cyclone InCYders. Now we're going to talk about volleyball and soccer. The Iowa State volleyball team, they lost both their games to number 2 Baylor 0-3. Didn't even win a set. Kind of as expected. I mean, the second-ranked team in the nation in Baylor, I mean, they're a tremendous team. They've been NCAA tournament appearances and since a long time. So Iowa State, they were behind the 8 ball there, but they were missing their middle hitters in Avery Rhodes and Alexis Engelbrecht. They were out with injuries. How much do you guys think their loss kind of hurt them, and their presence being gone? How does that hurt the Iowa State offense?
Yeah, I mean, it hurts it a lot. I don't know if they would have beat Baylor otherwise, probably not. But it's huge playing without them, and hopefully they're healthy for the remaining stretch of the season where it starts to get a little bit easier. But they didn't really get blown out of any sets. The worst one was 25-16, and everything else was within 5. So that's a good sign moving forward against the number 2 team in the country, that they only lost by more than 5 one set without Rhodes and Engelbrecht. So that's something to be happy about moving forward.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with Aaron. I mean, they kept the games pretty tight. And I mean, if they did have Avery Rose, I mean, she had a career high of 12 kills and 15 points against Texas Tech earlier in the season. And I mean, if she was there, it's hard to say if that would have helped, but I definitely think it would have, just having that a middle tech, especially against Baylor's height. And also Engelbrecht, I mean, she's a freshman, so it's kind of hard to say what she's really done for this team so far this season. But even I think Eleanor Holthouse, I mean, she stepped up without them, having like 2 blocks and 11 kills against Baylor. And then next game, Candelaria Herrera had like 9 kills and 5 blocks for the night. So I definitely think other players definitely stepped up in their shoes without having them.
Yeah, I agree with both the points you guys made in it. I'm sure it didn't help losing them. I mean, Avery's a great junior leader, been with the program for a while, and Alexis also with the missing the height advantage against Baylor. It would have. We don't know. It probably would have helped. Maybe we could have won a couple sets against Baylor, but it's great to see that even without them on the court, we can still hold our own against the number 2 team in the nation. So. Very sad losing them, but hope the best for them getting back on.
Yeah, in there, replacing them was Abby Greenman. I think it was her first. She was another freshman. It was her first action out there, and Chrissy Johnson-Lynch said she did, good. But it's hard to replace Rhodes as a junior there, who's been playing, I think, since her freshman year, and it's just, difficult, especially against the number 2 team. But as you pointed out, Baylor's height, it got to Iowa State as the Cyclones hit a season low percentage of .078. Is that hitting percentage? Do you guys think that's out of the Cyclones' control when you're just overpowered like that? Or what do you guys think they maybe could have done differently to improve that?
I mean, personally, I think it's kind of out of their control. I mean, you can set up the block as much as you want. And, I mean, they can also do things differently on the end with serving, maybe serving a little more aggressive, maybe trying to find your hole or the player that's the most weakest on defense. But, I mean, if they have the power on the outside, it's out of your hands at that point. You can play your defense, the libero, the back row can do their job. But they're ranked number 2. I mean, they're ranked number 2 for a reason.
Yeah, definitely. Baylor's a great team with a lot of size. And I would expect that number to rise back to where we've seen it this season for Iowa State with the remaining schedule. They just played a great team in Baylor. And I really do think, you can say, you don't like to say, it was out of our control. We could have done, the players would say they could have done better, but just on paper, it was a very big mismatch in Baylor's advantage.
Yeah, nothing really much that you can do about the height other than possibly switching up your assignments and really, losing those two key players didn't help at all. But I think it is important to kind of keep the mindset of play your best game every time you go out there for the rest of the season. But yeah, nothing really much you can do about not having the height against a great team like Baylor.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about their offense struggling, but the defense played pretty well. They held Baylor to below their average hitting percentage of .300 in 5 out of the 6 sets. So what do you guys, it seems like the strength of this team, what do you guys think is kind of doing that for them this season compared to previous years?
I think the strength of this team this year is their endurance. I mean, they've clearly played some ranked teams right out of the gate, and that's kind of hard to get past them. But I think since they've gotten past them, I mean, they can't really let anything else phase them. I mean, they've learned a lot from playing great teams, and I think it only makes you better at the end. And I think especially against Baylor, I mean, they did show their defense, showed up. I mean, they were under 300, and I think what matters the most with this team is that they just show up. And like ISU has lost, but they've also made Baylor work for it, and they've proved that their defense is solid. Isiana led the black back row with 16 digs, and then followed with 13 digs the second game, with the help by Taylor Barsky by 411 digs.
Yeah, I would agree that their endurance is definitely going to be a strength, and they're going to appreciate what they've gone through so far this season when they get to the rest of the stretch. And I think they're going to look really good against some of those unranked teams that they're about to play, and kind of show that, they were just up against a really tough schedule. But the defense was definitely a strength with the hitting percentage as low as it was for Baylor, and them only losing by, it was within 5 every single set except one, and the defense really kept them in some sets against that height for Baylor. But yeah, I definitely think just the strength of schedule they've had so far is going to pay off a lot down the stretch.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. The endurance and defense definitely are big parts of the team. I think one of the biggest strengths is also playing up to your opponents, not letting that ranking kind of get in your head and doing the best you can every time you go out there. Like you said, Aaron, keeping it close in 5 out of 6 sets and just trying to win at any means necessary, I guess.
Yeah, now that we're on the topic of kind of their strengths of the team, one of them has been Jenna Brandt. She's helped the Cyclones tremendously as their setter. Iowa State's 3rd in the conference in assists. How crucial do you guys think she is to their success, leading forward on offense?
I think personally, Jenna Brandt is definitely matters the most on the court. I mean, yes, every player does matter, but the setter is the most important, basically because she is the captain. She's the one that controls who the sets go to, who's the go-to, who's on for the night, who's off for the night. She calls the plays. She's really the playmaker on the court. She's the go-to in that way. And I just think Brandt will help the team immensely. She knows if Herrera is on, if she's going to go to her or even hold house for the game. I mean, she had a season high of 51 assists against Texas Tech, and that was a huge win for herself. And I think that momentum has just grown for her, and it's moving for the rest of the season, and it will just feed off onto the rest of the players.
Yeah, I think I would agree that she's the most important player as the centerpiece of the offense and as the facilitator and setter for everyone. She's 7th in the Big 12 in assists and 8th in service aces. And she gained a lot of valuable experience her first 2 years at Iowa State. And now this is her first year really consistently starting as a junior. And just those 2 years of work she's put in have really been showing, and she's been a huge help to the Cyclone offense.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Her presence is definitely valued by the Cyclones a lot. A player that's been here multiple years, kind of knows what the program is all about and can show that to incoming freshmen and people that are still working their way into games. And I think her 51 assists against Texas Tech, her season high, definitely shows that she's a big part of this Cyclones volleyball team, and looking forward to see what she can do the rest of the way and next year as well.
Yeah, as you pointed out, Aaron, this is Brant's really her first year of being in full control of that setting spot. So, you can only expect her really to continue to improve vastly as the year goes on. I mean, you kind of have that pressure when you're a backup and stuff like that when you don't see your work necessarily coming to fruition. But when you start having success, it just keeps rolling, kind of like with Brees Hall, once you find that success, it just seems to continue to find you. But the Cyclones, as you said, through the hardest part of their schedule. You might look at their record and think, "Oh, they're 2-6. They're not very good. They must be having a down year." But they're going to face the easiest part of their schedule now, and their streak can start this weekend with Oklahoma. So stay tuned for that. Now we're going to move on to Cyclones soccer. Now they suffered a brutal 0-1 loss to a winless Texas Tech team. One we thought Iowa State was going to be able to win. They only mustered 4 shots in the whole game, which is incredibly low. What do you guys think needs to change offensively? They've really been struggling offensively these past couple of games.
I think what needs to change offensively is they just can't be taking shots to be taking shots. They have to be strategic with it. I mean, on the offensive end, I can't remember how many shots, was it 4 shots they took this game? I think they just need to be taking more shots. I mean, you can't just take 4 shots and just assume you're going to win the game or at least one of them are going to go in. Like, you have to set up a strategic play and not be wasteful with your offensive end. And I mean, like I was saying, if you go a whole game with only 4 shots, you're clearly not showing all your cards. You're not showing what the offense is made up. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think really all you can say is just to stick with it. They need to keep putting pressure on the defense, and hopefully the opportunities will come if they keep putting pressure on the defense, and they can take advantage of getting the defense out of position and things like that. But 4 shots is rarely going to win you a game, and 0 of those shots were on target. They only had 2 corner kicks, so just a very low amount of opportunities in a game where it only takes 1 opportunity to win a game, especially with Jordan Silkowitz as the goalkeeper back there. But just have to do a better job of setting yourself up for better opportunities than what they've been producing.
Yeah, and like you guys both said, taking more shots is obviously going to help get points on the board, and we know that we can lean on our defense and definitely our goalkeeper Jordan Sikowitz, but you got to get the offense moving and really show that like pay off what the defense just gave you. And even though we have our great goalkeeper, that doesn't mean we can win the game just by stopping. We also have to score and be offensive, especially against a team like Oklahoma.
Yeah, I mean, you guys mentioned it's quality over quantity in the game of soccer. A 1 goal is all it takes to win the game, or even 2 when it's 2-1. So you only need a 1 or 2 shots a game to be excellent. But for them to muster only 4 shots, that's tough offensively, and your opportunities are so limited then. And from the games I've saw, at least earlier in the season, that I couldn't find a stat on it, but their time of possession seems to be way lower than their opponents. And so I think they just need to do a better job of kind of trying to keep the ball in the upper half and, kind of create more of those scoring opportunities, because right now it seems like they're just not getting them. But another thing that may have led to their loss was Iowa State fouled double the amount of the Red Raiders. They fouled 16 times to 9. What factors do you guys think kind of played into that differential in that game?
Yeah, I think it's kind of ties into what you said about the time of possession. When you're not really getting shots off and the offense isn't doing much and you aren't controlling the ball that much, you start to press on defense to try and gain possession and create more opportunities on offense. So I really think the penalty differential is just a result of starting to press on defense. You feel like your back's against the wall when you're not controlling the time of possession and getting opportunities, and just starting to lose some of that defensive discipline that Iowa State has actually really done a pretty good job of up to this point this season. So it's kind of surprising to see them the ratio be 16 to 9.
Yeah, Aaron made a good point. When offense isn't doing their job and there's no luck on the offensive end, obviously defense is going to push and try to work some magic out on that end. And I think that's why so many penalties came out. And I personally think penalties are going to hurt, and penalties will win a game for the other side. And I think fouling double the amount as your opposer just gives them an edge you don't get. And every time they fouled, they were just giving them an easier shot to score, not making them really earn it. So, I mean, I can't really blame defense for really pressing harder on that end because they really were just trying to give their offense a chance to score some.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with you on that, Julia. I mean, Texas Tech definitely took advantage of the fouling early once players seemed to be getting frustrated with not getting those shots there or not getting shots at all, really. And I think the head coach, Matt Fannin, really just needs to keep the players under control once you get into tough spots like that and keep them cool under pressure.
Yeah, it's important to point out that Texas Tech, they're not necessarily the winless team that they look on paper. I mean, coming into the year, they were ranked as actually the preseason favorite in the Big 12 conference, but they've had some key injuries to some All-Americans from last year. I think their goalkeeper missed half this season, and she just came back a couple games ago, and then another one of their players is out this season. But, they're still a tough team. Every game in the Big 12 for soccer it's a tough one. It's a grind. But a constant theme for the Cyclones this season has been Jordan Silkowitz. I mean, she seems to single-handedly at goalkeeper be keeping Iowa State in games, but that offense just needs to step up. The Cyclones won't be able to make it to above 500 since they're 2-5 right now. They have 2 games left. So, these next 2 games, kind of just building blocks, I guess you could say, for next season. What do you guys think needs to be changed, or what would you want to see them do here in these last 2 games?
The offense just needs to be better, plain and simple. There's been some obvious growth this year. They've actually won some games, which is nice to see. But if they want to establish themselves in the conference next year, the offense has got to start doing something. And I don't want to speak exactly to Jordan Silkowitz's mindset, but as a goalkeeper, going into every game, if you feel like the offense isn't going to be productive and they aren't going to control the time of possession and just the entire game is on your shoulders, it can get to you mentally when you feel like it's your responsibility to go out there and win the game, which obviously the goalkeeper is very important, but a goalkeeper's confidence can stem from how productive their offense is. So I just like to see Iowa State's offense to continue to get better and the defense and Silkowitz just keep doing what they're doing.
Yeah, I definitely think the biggest thing they need to do for next season is just change and work on their offense. I mean, Silkowitz is obviously proving her spot in the goalie, and defense is working the tail off, but the offense is just nothing's coming out from their end. No numbers are coming out. They're not attacking enough. I just really think either someone on the team needs to step up offensively and prove that they can score some goals for the Cyclones, or they need to start searching for players and recruiting players who will attack more and be creative on the offensive end.
Yeah, definitely on offense, they need to understand what a great defense their team has and just kind of build off of that. Because if really you can't get any shots out, you're not going to win any games just by having a great defense. And I also think that maybe, towards this end of the season, you're not going to be over 500. Maybe try some new offensive styles, see what works, and you could build off of that for next season. And like you said, Julia, maybe they might have to recruit some new people and kind of show them what it's like with what they want to work with. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think an important, as much as we're criticizing them here, important distinction to make is this is the best they've done in a while here. I mean, at least over 5 years that they've never had success like this. So Fannon's doing a great job kind of changing things here, but we're just kind of giving them some critiques and things they can improve. In my opinion, I would like to see the defense kind of lead into offense. Right now, I kind of feel like, it's like the offense is failing and the defense is bailing them out. They just need to be cohesive as a whole unit and, play together more. But like I said, they haven't had a winning conference season since 2005. I mean, they've won a couple games, but they seem to be competing a lot better. But Fannin has them heading in the right direction. They're going to need to work their way into kind of that top tier of teams rather than being below. But we'll see how they finish off these next 2 games, and we'll be sure to talk about them on Cyclone InCYders. But stick around. We're going to talk about the Big 12 games for this week. We're going to pick them as we normally do. Last week, we all enjoyed excellent weeks. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about that next on Cyclone InCYders. Welcome back to Cyclone InCYders. Now we're going to pick our Big 12 games of the week. Last week, Oklahoma State was favored by 3.5, and Iowa State only lost by 3. So that led me to an undefeated week, and I am now 8-1 this season. Julius 5-1, Logan's 0-1 because he wasn't with us last week, and then Aaron 6-2. So we're all, last week all did excellent. I think I was 5-0, and I think Aaron and Julia were both 4-1. So, or maybe 4-0, something like that. Anyways, we all did really good. So we're gonna pick these games this week and see if we can emulate that success. Our first one, we got Kansas State going to West Virginia. Mountaineers favored by 3.5. Who do you guys got?
I think K-State is still very good, even without Skylar Thompson. And Chris Kleeman seems to be a very good coach that basically is just picking up where that program left off with Bill Snyder. But I know it was just Kansas last week, but Will Howard looked very solid, their freshman backup quarterback who's now their starter. And hopefully he's not a new quarterback for Kansas State that will haunt us for 4 years. But ignoring that, I'm going to take them against West Virginia. I think Kansas State is hot. Will Howard looks good, and Chris Kleeman is a good coach that's going to help them win the game.
Yeah, I think they just entered the new AP poll, and I think that momentum, that excitement for them is going to roll over, and they're going to beat West Virginia. So I'm also going to go with Kansas State.
I'll actually take West Virginia on this one. I think they'll get the upset and knock Kansas State out of that top spot in the Big 12. Mainly just because both teams do have a great run game, but if you look at West Virginia, they have Lady Brown with 519 rushing yards and 7 touchdowns. Also, West Virginia with the 18 sacks on defense, and Kansas State 14. But I will take West Virginia upsetting the number 16th ranked Kansas State.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the stats here, and West Virginia has almost more than 100 total yards per game and less than 200 yards allowed less. But with that, I think they just played some worse opponents, so they've been able to kind of bolster them statistics. And I think Kansas State's just a better, well-coached team, and even without their quarterback, they always seem to kind of play well in these types of games. So I'm going to take the Wildcats. But moving on, our next one, we got TCU, the Horned Frogs favored by 2.5. They're going to Baylor to take on the Bears. What do you guys think?
Max Duggan against Charlie Brewer is a really interesting matchup for me. A senior who's been around for a while, and Max Duggan who's kind of establishing himself in the Big 12. So I think that's going to be interesting to watch. But Baylor is a team, they've had a couple of close ones since they blew out Kansas earlier this year. And they got back into action after 3 weeks off against Texas, and they looked a little rusty. They made that score look a little bit closer than I think the game really was overall. But I think after having a couple close ones, Dave Aranda is going to get his first statement win in the Big 12 because Kansas doesn't really count. And I think he's going to defend home field and defeat Gary Patterson head-to-head.
Yeah, I'm going to take Baylor on this one. We haven't really seen much of them this year due to COVID problems. Even the Iowa State game is still up in the air. But even though the record doesn't show it, I think they put up great numbers. TCU, other than their quarterback, hasn't really been able to run the ball as well as they wanted to. And I think if Baylor keeps up the sacks and interceptions that they've been having against teams they played, they'll definitely get the win against the Horned Frogs. They kind of just have to stay in it. Or we have to remember that they stayed in it with Texas for a long time in that game. And, yeah, I'll take Baylor at home this week.
Yeah, I'm with them too as well. I'm going to go with Baylor. I just think their defense is going to conquer against TCU.
Yeah, guys, we got to remember here, TCU played Iowa State to within 3 points, and they defeated Texas by 2. So they've shown that they're able to play in kind of some close games. So I'm going to actually take them on the road over Baylor. I think Baylor, this season with a new coach, they're just kind of struggling to mesh offensively. So, and I think Duggan's in for a breakout performance, so I'm going to take the Horned Frogs there. But our next game here, we got Texas going to Oklahoma State, number 6 in the nation, defeated Iowa State by 3 last week. But even despite being number 6 ranked, the Cowboys are only favored by 3.5 over Texas. So who do you guys think? You think the Longhorns can come in there and do what we couldn't?
I think Oklahoma State's defense showed to be pretty legit last week, and I think they're going to give Texas some problems. I expect Texas to give them a good game, just like Iowa State did, but I do think ultimately that Oklahoma State defense is going to help them win the game.
Yeah, like you said, Oklahoma State does have a great defense. Keep in mind, though, only the 3 interceptions on the season, one of those being from Brock Purdy. But I'm actually going to take Sam Ehlinger and the Texas Longhorns. I think this will be a big statement win on the road for Texas. And, with a great dual-threat quarterback like Sam Ehlinger, we've seen them run the ball a lot with him. And I think hopefully they'll be able to find some holes in the Oklahoma State defense like Breece Hall was able to last week and come out with the win against the Cowboys.
Yeah, I'm going to switch it up, and I'm going to go with Texas because I honestly think somebody's going to come out here and beat Oklahoma State, and that's going to drop their ranking, and I think Texas is going to do what we just couldn't do.
Yeah, I'm actually going to agree with you guys. I'm going to take Texas as well. I think Oklahoma State, I kind of touched on it earlier in the show. I think they're not a number 6 team, and nobody's really proved their worth in the Big 12 of being a top 10 team, and that's why this year is so unique for Iowa State because they can claim that. But Texas, I think they've just had some underwhelming performances, and they're going to come ready to prove it because if they don't get this win this week, they're pretty much done for the season because they don't have any higher ranked opponents on their schedule to be able to beat. So I think Texas is going to come out ready to play and either be able to keep it to within 3 points or get a win there. So, but anyways, another one of the highly touted teams in the Big 12, Oklahoma, got back into the rankings this week at number 24. They're favored by 14.5 on the road to Texas Tech, who defeated West Virginia last week. What do you guys think? Sooners, can they defeat them by more than 15 or more?
Yeah, I think Oklahoma's finding their stride, and Spencer Rattler is getting more and more comfortable as the season progresses, just like we all thought he would. They dominated TCU last week. I think they'll do the same to Texas Tech, and Texas Tech will probably have a little more confidence coming into this one, just coming off of a win. But I think Oklahoma covers, and I don't see it being very close.
Yeah, I agree with Aaron. I think Oklahoma's going to go win this game just because I think Oklahoma's getting back in their groove since they last played us, and I think Rattler's showing that he can be an outstanding quarterback for Oklahoma.
I will have to agree with you guys on that. As much as I am not a fan of Spencer Rattler and the Oklahoma Sooners, there's no denying that they have a very explosive offense. We've seen that time and time again, especially even against Iowa State and especially against TCU last week. I think their defense has also stepped it up a lot. They have 15 sacks compared to Texas Tech's 7, and I believe Texas Tech won't be able to stop their offense. They undoubtedly have multiple weapons, one of them being Sir Roderick Thompson and Eric Uzo-Camera on offense.
Yeah, guys, Texas Tech gave up 438 yards to West Virginia last week. So imagine what Oklahoma is going to do to their defense. I just see, Oklahoma, they're a great team, and I'm going to go ahead and agree with you guys that they're going to beat the Red Raiders by more than 15 points. So now on to our premier matchup of the week, the one everyone has been wanting us to pick. Iowa State going to Kansas to take on the lowly Jayhawks. Iowa State favored by 28.5. I don't even remember how much Kansas was supposed to lose by last week, but I think they defeated the odds. But anyways, Iowa State going to Kansas, ranked 23rd. What do you guys think?
So the skeptic in me thinks that Iowa State's going to allow Kansas to stay in the game way longer than they should. And 28.5 is probably accurate for how much they should beat them by, but just from some things that haunt me in the Cyclones past, it's been very tough for me. I've been struggling with this pick, but I'm going to maintain that this team is different than teams that haunt us from the past, and I think they'll dominate Kansas and gain some confidence and momentum back. I do think I don't think Kansas should get any more than 2 touchdowns against Iowa State's defense. Maybe like one in the first half and a garbage time touchdown later in the game. And Iowa State, really, if they play to their capabilities, I think they should beat them by just as much as Kansas State did, which I think was like 41. So,
yeah, and let's be honest with ourselves. Kansas has little to no offense. We've seen that time and time again, no matter who they've played. ISU's defense is definitely one of the best in the Big 12, just allowing 123 rushing yards and 260 passing yards per game. The Jayhawks quarterback, Jalen Daniels, last week against Kansas State, although I don't think he was sacked, I do believe he was playing very scared. Threw a pick six, and I definitely believe that ISU's defense will be able to capitalize off of that, especially with the great talents like Mike Rose, who has 2 interceptions and is leading the team in tackles. I will definitely have to say that Brock Purdy and the Iowa State Cyclones will have a great bounce back win against Kansas, and most likely beating them by more than 28.5.
Yeah, I agree with Logan. I think this is the win that Iowa State needs the most against Kansas, especially coming off Oklahoma State, not playing their best. I think this is their shot to just really have some fun and just get back in the rhythm.
Yeah, so I need to correct myself here. Kansas lost by 41 last week, Kansas State. I was thinking of the previous week against West Virginia where they only lost by 21. Close one there. But the Jayhawks, I looked up their schedule to kind of look at it, and the basketball schedule actually popped up in front of the football schedule. So that tells me all I need to know. Cyclones all the way. Haven't even lost picking the Cyclones yet. So why would we change now? What do you guys expect here on Cyclone InCYders? Next week, we're going to talk about, the results of the game and some more things in Iowa State sports. Basketball season's kind of sneaking up on us, so I'm sure we'll have some storylines there. But we'll be glad to see you next week on Cyclone InCYders. Thank you.